Everyone, welcome back. So this is part 2. I was just talking about how to organize your notes for a college class to help you get through the tests. Once again, I'm in the political science class right now called Political Ideologies, Modern Political Ideologies. We are quizzed after pretty much every chapter. So there's 7 quizzes, 1 test. Well, the professor calls them quizzes. Once again, we call them tests. So what I'm going to do right now is go through what I call storyboarding. So these are my storyboards for chapter 3. This is the beginning of chapter 3 from this book. Okay, the political ideologies and the democratic ideal. It is the 11th edition. So this is the textbook that we are using in class. This was the textbook that I used to make the drawings that I did, along with the lectures of the professor. So once again, linked down below will be my Excuse Me Professor page to this class, where you can see my notes. You'll have access to my notes and the drawings when I make them. And underneath that, I also am trying to create for us to communicate together. Is like a blog area where we can talk to each other if you have questions about anything in the class, or you're even outside the class and you have questions because you've become interested in the subject matter at this point. Let me know, and so we can all connect and get together and talk, help each other, answer questions or answers, and communicate. Really, I think we need to start communicating a lot more in our classrooms with our students and help each other out as a community instead of our own individual selves in our own little world, right? Help us lift all of us up at the same time. So this video, once again, is going to go through me going through my storyboards for this chapter, just the beginning of this chapter, to help you understand how to do them yourself. Now I'm going to explain them a little bit more elaborately than I would if I was just with a friend or something. So what I have done with my storyboards is I'll either find a family member or even go to the professor with them, and I'll explain them to him if possible. My idea now is to take my video camera, and if all I have is my video camera, and explain it to my video camera. Then when I do, I can play back that videotape that shows me explaining what I understand, to help me once again reiterate and get the information into my head as quickly as possible. Getting to this point, I understand, can be a bit time consuming, but it does work. So that's what I'm going to do right now, and understand this is my interpretation of what I understood from the professor myself. So please go back to your notes. If you have a slightly different definition, you can comment below on the in the comment section of this video. And so, but once again, this is my interpretation of what I understood from the class, from the lectures, and from the book, and when I created the drawings. Okay, so what you're going to see is you're also going to see when I talk about the drawings, so you are seeing exactly what I'm seeing, is the drawings pop up. So I'm going to disappear, you're going to hear my voice, but you're going to see the drawings pop up, so you can follow along with what I'm saying, how I'm describing the drawings, and go from there, okay? So the first drawing of chapter 3, since we're learning about liberalism, it is entitled Liberalism, and we are going to go through human nature. So there's 3 parts of human nature, and the first part, as you see, is a person with a light bulb going off. So he has an idea, he's thinking about maybe doing something. You see the happy face and the smiley face. To me, that represents the pros and cons. So he's wavering, He has an idea, he wants to do something, he's weighing the pros and cons of his decision. So liberals are saying that we should have freedom to be able to weigh the pros and cons ourselves, because, and you'll hear this word a lot, because we have a rational mind. That is a very important word when it comes to liberalism, that we have a rational mind to make our own decisions. Therefore, less government and less is good. The other disclaimer, let me put that there, is I'm talking about the international relations definition of liberalism. What we have here in the United States is different, tends to be different than what we have in other countries when you leave this country. So when I say less, these people are people that think, less government is better to help give us more freedom. So that's what I'm talking about. Then you go to the dollar sign, and that's benefits. The person is also wavering the benefits. Is this going to be good for me? Is this going to be bad for me? When I'm making this decision, this rational decision, what is going to be the best decision? I have a rational mind. I can do that. You have the flower growing and the flower dying, depending on if you give it enough water or not. And once again, watering ourselves with knowledge, with learning, and that we have the right to do that. So that all falls in with human nature. Basically, decision making with our rational mind, because we're human beings, and because we are human beings with a rational mind, we should have the right to be free to make our own decisions. And so, once again, you have the choose, you have the balancing, the red side and the blue side. So number 2, you see the little green person with me. So I'll go into this term more later. But this is the definition of self-interest or self-interested, which is not the same as being selfish. It's good. You have to understand, when you're talking about liberalism, the difference between the two. There is self-interested and there is selfish. Self-interested, it pretty much means that you might have to think of yourself, at least this is how I understand it. You have to think of yourself first before perhaps you can think about somebody else. Or for you to help somebody else, you might be helping yourself first before you can get there. My professor tends to use this example about an air pilot flying an airplane. He might have 100 passengers on that plane, but he himself is self-interested in the fact that he also wants to get home safe as well. So he might actually put his self-interested need first to get home safe first before he does, everybody else. Everybody wants to get home. He wants to help everybody, but his desire, his wish, is for him to also get home. So he has to think about himself while then thinking about others. So it's not selfish, which is where the pilot is just thinking about himself, not caring about anybody else. It's more like I have to think about myself first. This is how I view it before I can even maybe comprehend about thinking about somebody else. And I will go into more of that definition a bit later. So the third picture here that has the 3 is competition. So you have 2 people fighting, right? They're in competition with each other. Liberals say that that's good, to want to be better, to want to be more than somebody else, have more coconuts. Once again, this term will come up again. More coconuts than somebody else, a bigger house than somebody else, because it really helps us develop and build, right? So if I want to build a better house, well then maybe I'll help even invent something for that to occur. So they see competition as actually a really positive thing to embrace, and that people shouldn't come along and try to really destroy that competitive spirit that businesses may have, that individual may have, to excel and succeed society and themselves. on the bottom here, you have, that is my little Statue of Liberty, and people with a bunch of different hats. So liberty is another term that's going to come up, the difference between liberty and freedom. But basically, these people are allowed as individuals to wear whatever colored hat they want. So you can see that there's lots of different colored hats. To embrace their own individual ideas, maybe their own individual way of dressing or looking or being, that they're allowed to basically be individuals and no one has the right to come along and say they shouldn't. So liberalism is very much about an individualistic way of viewpoint, not about, being like everybody else. That you should be like everybody else and think like everybody else. They're about the individual. So that is the first picture. And on liberalism, now I'm going to turn my page and put up the second picture. And so this is the definition of liberalism, which is what I got to in the first video as my picture example. So here, the definition of liberalism, I have the United States on the free side. I have other with free crossed out on the other side. And these people are swimming across to the free side. They're trying to get away, right? They're trying to find liberty and freedom. And underneath, on the free side, you have, once again, someone able to have their own ideas. Someone with a book have their own interests. On down below that, have your own religion. Once again, I use the thing, if you're a tree hugger and you just want to hug trees all day, you should have a belief to hug trees all day, If you want to believe in the spaghetti monster, then you should be free to believe in the spaghetti monster if you want. If you believe in a God, you should be free to believe in a God, and whatever religion, whatever belief system you want, as long as it doesn't infringe on somebody else's growth or perhaps happiness in terms of trying to get somebody else to believe what you want to believe. So this is really all about individualism, right? So on the other side, the non-free side, you have someone pulling a coal cart. So he's working in a coal mine, and he's always going to stay there. He's not going to get more education. That is his status in society. He can't move up from there. There's a lot of war and conflict, so I have a little war symbol with two people fighting with swords. That's my war symbol. So there's a lot of conflict, maybe a lot of conflict in what people should believe, and therefore suppressing what someone's thinking. Or if you don't believe what I believe, then you're going to be prosecuted. So that's the war symbol, that type of conflict. Along with then the Catholic Church symbol, where only Catholicism, which comes from pretty much the medieval time, right? The Catholicism, if you weren't Catholic, then you would be punished. So, right? Or if you weren't Protestant too at one point, then same thing. So we're only one religion, one belief system is allowed to exist, therefore suppressing everybody else. So that is the second picture, my definition of liberalism. So we will go to now picture number 3. And this is where I get into more the idea of self-interested. So as you can see, the person is shoveling money, and the other person doesn't have much money. In the second picture, you have a factory going on, and some trees were chopped down to create that factory for jobs, right? And then you have a nice, little pristine house around some nice trees, and then you have kind of a rundown apartment building on the other side. So what do these 3 things mean? Well, you could see it as, once again, being selfish, but we're talking about being self-interested. So the person shoveling money, I use this example when I was catering a lot. I lived in Berkeley for 8 years, and I worked a lot of charity events there. So you see really how the self-interested definition works in that area. For one thing, I got employed. So people would go to these charity events. A lot of times these charity events, yes, were about getting tax write-offs or about certain things were being auctioned off. Maybe networking with other people. Their friends are going. There's lots of different reasons why people actually ended up at these charity events. But in the end, they were helping others build. I like this example where I was at one charity event. Robin Williams, actually saw him live there. It's in San Francisco. And the school needed $300,000 to build a building, a music building. So it's for their music department. Now, it was probably really expensive to put on, but they do make a surplus of money. And one thing that happened was something was being auctioned off. It might have been a trip to somewhere, I'm not quite sure. But the bidding got up to $100,000. Okay, so, and 3 people were actually bidding on this same thing for $100,000. So the auctioneer, because they needed $300,000 for the building, he asked if each person would actually donate $100,000 for the building, because if you could get all 3 to donate at the same time for this one item, then they'd get that building, right? And they agreed. So these 3 people who had way more money than I did actually donated $100,000 that night for them to get the building. Well, they might have had to gone to college. Maybe, they were doing things to get the money. I don't know how they got the money, but in that sense, they had to think of themselves to get that money first in their pocket before they were able to get to the charity event. Before then, they were able to donate that money for that music department to get that building at that high school. It was an amazing experience. And so that's one way, being self-interested. Maybe think about yourself before you can think about others. It might be another way of doing it. Doesn't mean that you don't care or you're not thinking about others, but there are other reasons around it, So that's self-interested. That's my definition. The next picture down below is talking about, once again, the individualism aspect, where everybody is free to dream. Doesn't mean that you're going to end up on the same path, and that's the next one. Doesn't mean that everyone's going to end up the same economically, but that everyone has a right, you could say, to get a college education. That gets talked a lot about, right? We all should have the freedom to get a college education and realize our fullest potential that we possibly can in society. And someone shouldn't come along and say that we shouldn't be able to do that, or shouldn't be able to become a pilot, or shouldn't be able to become, a costumer or a seamstress somewhere, or an actor, even if that's what you want to pursue. So we all need to pursue our own dreams and have a right to, even if it is the same dream. And then underneath you can see, even though we might have the same American dream, we all end up on different paths, and they don't see that as a bad thing. They actually see it as a positive, because in the positive of that, then it helps keep a balance within society. So not everyone's going to end up rich, not everyone's going to end up poor. There's going to be some people in the middle, even though maybe they got all the same degree in the same department. They're all going to end up different. So I'm going to take a break right now. You get some coffee. That was 3 good pages, and I will be right back. So I'm back with my refreshment. I hope that you were able to get your refreshment. So let's go through 3 more of these pictures. Hopefully that will be enough for this video. I'll try and do more later if I can, but not to make this one too long. So we're going to get through 3 more pictures. And so the next picture is rationalist assumptions. So that is one of the definitions in our book. And once again, it brings up the word rational. So I used the professor's example that he had in class about lightning. And in the olden days, when there was lightning, they just said, oh, well, the lightning is because there's an angry God, right? Well, that wasn't exactly true. Certain scientists then started contemplating with their rational mind, well, there must be something more to it than just an angry God. So you have the guy going out with his key and kite and trying to understand what it is that is making lightning, which is, of course, ended up being electricity. And there's a whole science behind that, right? Using the rational mind. So using rational assumptions is basically using science. You could think of it that way. It's not using a belief system of lightning that is just an angry God. It's actually going out and finding out what the truth actually is. So that is rational assumptions, is using the rational mind to find out what the actual truth is. And science is, I think, the biggest example of this, right? So, and then underneath that is an ox. So once again, I use the professor's example here. An ox does not have a rational mind. So human beings, in the liberal sense, with liberalisms, we have a rational mind. Therefore, we should be free to use that rational mind once again to make decisions for ourselves as individuals. The ox, however, does not have the capacity of a rational mind to make those irrational assumptions, to find out what the truth is, to go between pros and cons, to see what his, the yes and no, what's going to be the greatest thing for his life to do. He doesn't contemplate really about his life and going to college and all those things, right? So basically the ox is put into a pen. What do we use the ox for? Well, we usually use the ox to plow our fields, or we used to. We don't really anymore, but we used to. And so we see the ox as someone that needs us to control it, you could say. I have this little slave picture on the side, because that used to be the assumption about slaves, is that they're dumber, they don't have the rational mind like the white male does, so therefore they should be enslaved and be told what to do and controlled for our own purposes. So that is a brief definition of the rationalist assumptions, and how having rationalist assumptions as a human being is different than seeing an ox, and why an ox wouldn't have what liberals would think of as a rational mind, therefore to control the ox, do what we want it to do to help us prosper and live a fuller life. Okay, so that is 4. I'm going to turn my pages. And so now, stuck. So here we have picture number 5. And so it still goes back to making the decisions. So I have a person, she's thinking, do I want McDonald's? Do I want broccoli? McDonald's, broccoli for dinner. What's going to be the best choice, or maybe what's just going to be the choice I want to do right now, right? You have a person lifting weights. Or should I just sit and watch TV and be a couch potato? So we have these decisions to make. Once again, what's the best one? But see, we might not choose the best decision. So maybe eating broccoli might be the healthier choice. But maybe we still go out to McDonald's 5 days a week. We know we're not supposed to do it. We're supposed to eat our broccoli. But the McDonald's is what we choose. So they're not even saying, liberals, that we're going to make. Oops, sorry, my page was turned. They're not saying that we're going to make the best decisions always for ourselves, but just that we can waver the pros and cons. So that's what this picture is representing. That these people, this woman that is thinking this, she's still going to choose McDonald's, and she's still going to choose being a couch potato, but she still has rationality to understand that going to McDonald's is not in the better of her interest. Watching TV is not in the better of her interest than going to the gym and working out. Then we go to here, talking about Pluto and Freud. So Pluto gets brought up a lot in here. And so Pluto had 3 different levels that he saw the human spirit, the soul of the people had. So on the bottom, you have the worker, punitive, and so you have like a guy with a sword. He's going to want to fight all the time. Money, greed. Once again, got the McDonald's, you got the television, which didn't exist in its time, but it does in ours. So basically he is saying that the lowest people and their souls is all about their base desires. So the desires, and they are controlled by their desires, and they will always be controlled by their desires. And he didn't even see that people could graduate to become better. He just saw that there are these 3 levels, and whatever you were born at was the level you are always going to be. So in the middle section is the spirit, the warrior, who is going by his drives to be more noble, even to sacrifice things in his own life to become that noble person, to be that warrior. So the bottom rung doesn't wish to sacrifice anything, but the warrior, the noble more person does. So that's like the spirit is Pluto, saying that. Then on top of that, Pluto felt like, and we got this when we were talking about the definition of democracy, he felt that all societies should be controlled by a philosopher king, because the philosopher king was going to have the best knowledge of how to help society the best, and not just based on his own self-interest or selfish desires, but for the betterment of the people, because he's so wise. Somehow he got this wisdom, and he was educated in that direction to understand how to benefit people the most. So he felt like there should be one philosopher king ruler in society to control everybody else and say this is how society is going to be. So that is what the pyramid is. It's explaining Pluto and Freud, because Freud also had his own 3 tiers about people as we go into liberalism and understanding also another person's perspective. Okay, so that is number 5. So number 6. Here we have, so here we're talking more about competition. Once again, getting more of a definition on that. So what does that really mean in the liberal sense, competition? Well, once again, I'm using an example that my professor used of coconuts. He said, well, if we all end up on an island, liberals think that if we even ended up on an island altogether, we would still be competitive, because it's just part of our human nature. We are just competitive to want to be better than somebody else, or to just compete. Maybe it's healthy competition. So here you have coconuts. They're stranded on an island, but one person has more coconuts than the other person. Because he just wants more coconuts. He wants to see if he can have more coconuts than the next person. You know, they're on an island. There's no government. There's nobody controlling them. There's nothing but 2 people on an island, and they're still competing over coconuts. Okay? So, and then in the second area, you see once again my human nature symbol. So you have a person with a tree as a human nature symbol going away from the words, equaling once again ideas. They're rational, so they're questioning, and they're also wavering the pros and cons of something. So that's like the scale right there, right? So that's what that is, once again reminding me and you about a piece of the human nature, the rational mind, questioning, and also being able to judge. ourselves as individuals without someone else coming along and doing that for us. Then on the bottom, we have only so many, so this gets back into the competition, that one reason why human beings are competitive is because there's only so much time. There's only so many trees. There are only so much land that one can own. There's only so much gold on this planet. There's only so much food. So we're always going to be competitive because there's only so much of something that makes us competitive. Another example he used is that if you are in a family of 8 children, then you're going to be competitive when it comes to maybe your dad's affection, your mom's affection, because there's so many kids. Now, if you're a single child, you don't have to compete. If there's 2, there still might be some competition. On the other hand, if you have 8, then there's even more. So that is one way of thinking about it in terms of there's only so much time, food, money, gold, land. So that creates that natural human competition within ourselves to come out, and seeing that as a healthy part of human nature, not a negative. So that is competition. And then next, so this will be the last one. This will be the last one I will do for this video. And this is number 7. So we're talking about classical liberals. So they think about making mistakes as a good thing, not a bad thing. And the main thing here is, once again, government having too many regulations, too many policies. If you regulate too many things or have too many policies, laws, where people aren't allowed to make mistakes, then that's not good for society. That's not good for the individual. Once again, I use my professor's examples here, where he's talking about a child putting his finger in a light socket. He has a child, and when he said when he was, walking and talking, they put, those plastic things in the light sockets so that their child wouldn't go through and put his finger in and get shocked. Well, the classical liberals say, but don't do that because he won't learn. And the whole thing is to make mistakes and then learn from your mistakes. And that's what's most important, not protecting, always being in this protective area, protecting, but allow people to make mistakes, including drugs. Just legalize them. Legalize drugs. Pot, marijuana. Someone even today was trying to get me to sign something to legalize mushrooms. I don't have a problem. Go ahead, legalize mushrooms. Oh, I was busy, but once again, you could use that legalizing mushrooms once again. Let them do mushrooms. If people want some psychedelic thing on mushrooms, well, then they'll learn from it. They'll learn whether they should do it or not, what affects their life. But if they never have a chance, how are they going to learn to not do mushrooms again, or maybe continue to? So, and become that as part of their life. So, I just thought it was funny, legalizing mushrooms. I'm like, I didn't know they had to be legalized. But anyway, so underneath you have a person getting an F on a test, once again learning, someone falling down and having to get back up, and crashing a car around a curb. My professor used his son being on a bike going around the curb and then making that mistake of going too fast, falling down, and then learning he can't go around that corner as fast, right? So once again, if he's always there as a parent saying, don't go around that corner and protecting him from that experience, then the child may never learn. And that's what they're saying here, is that if people don't have an opportunity to make mistakes, like doing mushrooms, I'll use that one since I thought it was funny today, but doing mushrooms, then they're not going to know, so you might as well allow people to have the mushroom experience. Anyways, so, and the next one is more about individualism. We talked about this in one of the last chapters, about the agent being the individual. Once again, you have me, and the agent. The person is holding like a palette of paint, so he's creating himself. So basically, they're saying the agent, the individual, has the right to help create themselves as an individual, and once again, as long as them creating themselves isn't hampering somebody else, that is a good thing, and they should be allowed to be free to do that, and not have someone come along and say you're not allowed to create your own person, your own being, or even understand what that means, because we have to understand ourselves to even understand how to create ourselves, which is sometimes why we're even in college to begin with. Trying to understand who we are as a human being and an individual, and then being able to take that out into the world ourselves. And so then some obstacles that can come along. So that is, I have a little law. That's my symbol of a law, by the way. So if there's too many laws, like obstacles, like I have a woman that's supposed to be a woman blacked out, when women weren't allowed to vote, so that would be considered an obstacle to their growth, their own creativity of creating themselves. They're not allowed to vote. They weren't allowed to do a lot of things. Same with the civil rights movement, wherein they had the Jim Crow laws. So that would be a good example of like an extreme example of obstacles being put in place. So then people, an individual, a whole class even was not allowed to embrace who they really were or truly were to create themselves and move forward. So it's all about moving forward in life anyway. So that is this one. I did get to picture 7. What you'll find is, once again, I'll put a link below to the page of this class, the political ideology class. When you click on that link, you'll go to the page that will go to my Professor website, and you'll see my Google Drive notes. You can click on that. It'll take you to these notes. And what I've done here, at least for these ones, there's actually 13 pictures, is I put the picture with the paragraph that I took it from, and I highlighted the sentence. So there's notes that don't have the pictures, and there's notes that will have the pictures, so you can look at them as well if you find that helpful for yourself. Once again, this was just an example. I won't be doing this for all of them, but I hope this was helpful to at least understand how storyboarding works, how talking to yourself or using somebody else works. I'll also put a link below of me doing this with another student in my international relations class when I had that a year ago, and I just recorded our first session together, and how talking to each other with these pictures really created a learning atmosphere for us both to succeed, really. So once again, like this video, subscribe, and hopefully the next video I do will be about what mistakes I've made to get through college. I've made all the mistakes that every student makes, and so hopefully either you will not make a mistake, or if you're in one now, then you at least won't feel alone. Like, how stupid was I? Because I was that person too. Believe me, we all do it. I think we all make this pretty much the same mistakes, just because we're trying to learn and get through and understand who we are, as we're talking about liberalism right now, as an individual, who we are in society as a collective unit, and lots of different things, okay? So, see you later. Have a great night, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Di kan